This is Stay Paid, a sales and marketing podcast on a mission to help you close more deals and retain more business.
Welcome to another Silver Dollar episode of Stay Paid. My name is Joshua Stike.
And I'm Luke Akery.
And we've all heard the expression, you never get a second chance to make a first impression. Well, turns out that quote is actually grounded in psychology and neuroscience. First impressions matter a ton to your ability to build rapport with prospects and create trustworthiness with people you're doing business with. So today, we're going to talk about how first impressions work, why they could be helping or hurting you, and some body language tips that I got from a Forbes article for making a positive first impression.
I love it.
Do you believe in first impressions?
Do I?
Yeah.
Oh, 100%.
100%? Okay.
Yeah, 100%. I feel like in sales, as much as you hate to say it, it's like it is so critical that when you meet someone for the first time, they like you instantly.
Is there anything that stands out as like good or bad, like just off the top of your head?
Yeah, off the top of my head, I would say two things immediately you have to do is you have to have positive energy, right? Which is you're smiling and standing up straight. And then what I would say is you have to be genuinely authentic.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people, when they think energy, they think loud and boisterous. And I used to be this way, and it was like fake. Mm-hmm. But I didn't mean it to be fake. I was trying to be super nice and super like energetic, but it came across as fake.
Yeah.
Versus now, it's like I try to be myself with a smile and standing up tall. So nice. I would challenge people, be yourself.
Yes.
Smiled and standing up tall.
Well, we're going to get to some of those tips here in a little bit. But first, I thought this was really interesting, reading about how first impressions actually work. So according to triune brain theory, we're going to get a little nerdy here. Our brain is actually divided into three brains in one, according to this sort of hypothesis or this theory in neuroscience. The reptilian brain controls the body's vital functions. So this is your heart rate, your breathing, your body temperature, your balance. These are things you don't think about, right? Your body just does them, but your brain is telling your body to do that. The other part is the cortical brain that handles the language, analysis, and strategizing. So this is where all of your conscious thought happens in the prefrontal cortex. So anytime you're consciously having a thought, it's happening in that part of a brain. And then there's the limbic brain, which is most responsible.
Wait, is it limbic or limbric?
Limbic.
I always thought it was limbric. Okay.
I might have said limbric the first time, but limbic.
No, I probably just have always thought limbric. Okay.
Limbric, I did it.
The limbic.
Limbic brain that's most responsible for the value judgment. So the reason why this happens is because the amygdala in your brain is the first thing that actually receives information. And that's a very primitive tool that immediately determines whether something is a threat or not. So without even realizing it, that's going through your amygdala. And all of this happens before your brain can logically evaluate someone. So that's how you're forming these first impressions of people, because it's literally going through this process of, is this person a threat? Is this person good? Before you even have a chance to create your own impression of them.
Super interesting.
So why that matters, of course, in sales is, look, it takes anywhere from 2 to 30 seconds to assess someone's self-confidence, competence, likability, and trustworthiness.
Wow.
So less than 30 seconds, you're creating this impression of somebody. And once this unconscious evaluation has been labeled or has labeled someone as trustworthy or deceptive, kind or mean, right, competent or incompetent, it is incredibly hard. Actually, your brain will go through all sorts of mental gymnastics, the article says, in order to reinforce and hold on to that original impression that you had of someone, which means you'll identify and notice behaviors that reinforce that initial impression, and you will tend to ignore or downplay behaviors that contradict that initial impression.
It makes so much sense. I think of, like, from a tactical standpoint, interviewing. And so much of the interview is based upon the first impression, because you are literally find yourself trying to battle against, like, oh, I thought this, like, I literally had an interview yesterday and the guy's energy was super low and he was more soft-spoken, and we're interviewing him for a sales leadership position. And I'm like, oh, this guy is not super energetic.
Yeah.
And so the whole thing, I'm trying to test against that. But that was my initial first impression, and I'm trying to test, well, am I reading this wrong? Am I reading this right? That's super interesting.
We see it here on the podcast. If we get on with a guest and we're like, oh, the energy's not there, the connection's not there, you can almost feel it immediately. Think about relationships, right? This idea of if you become infatuated with someone or love at first sight, like, people will actually ignore bad behaviors to hold on to that original impression of that infatuation that they
But this is why matching and mirroring, which we did a whole podcast on this, right, is so critical in one essence, because some people that get onto the podcast with us, or they don't first like listen to us and talk to us, and they come in either just full gung ho and it's kind of like off-putting a little bit, or they come in just really just like not talking at all. Just, yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And you're just like, oh my gosh.
Did we interrupt you?
Yeah. And it's like, matching and mirroring is so critical to making a first impression in a way, because you could literally say hello, get our vibe, and then immediately replicate that vibe off to give a great chemistry and a great first impression. It's very interesting.
So here are 7 body language tips for making a positive first impression. Now, there's also, I think, some ways that we can transfer this to the phone if you're doing, your sales over the phone as well. But especially if you're meeting people in person doing listening presentations, here's some things to think about. Number 1 is to adjust your attitude. It takes 200 milliseconds to gather most of the information needed from a facial expression to determine a person's emotional state. So what that means is you can actually warm up before going into a meeting. Like, put yourself in that mentality, put yourself, develop the expression, practice the expression that you want people, that expresses the emotion that you want people to see. I think about you at conferences, right? You'll hype yourself up. You'll be jumping up and down. You'll be smiling. You'll be,
Before webinars, I hold a smile for a minute as that countdown is going down. So they can't see me. I'm off of camera. I hold a smile for a minute because I want to come on with that smile.
Yeah, I think about even, I know we referenced your brother, but I think about him and whenever we did some cold calls with him live, he was like, hey, he just got out of Grant Cardone training.
Yeah.
And it was all about attitude.
Yeah.
So he's like, I am going into each one of these calls with the best possible attitude. I am going to treat every single person like a millionaire. And you could feel the energy coming through the phone whenever he did that. Second tip is to stand tall, pull your shoulders back and hold your head high. We
slouch on this podcast. We need to start standing up taller.
We're
probably out of camera now. We're probably out of camera.
We just messed up their focus.
We literally went up 8 inches.
Ethan's first silver dollar recording, and we're moving around, changing the focus on
You
him.
look good.
But look, this is also rooted a lot in our psychology, where that portrays confidence and self-esteem. If you cross your arms or you hug yourself, you're unconsciously protecting your vital organs, right? This is the same thing with like, a dog. If a dog rolls over and shows you their belly, they trust you 100% because they're exposing their vital organs. The same thing that we do as humans.
Super interesting.
Yeah.
We roll over and show each other our bellies.
Well,
I do the same thing.
sometimes,
Ethan's like, hey, we're learning new stuff about you.
We don't
Ethan,
have to say what goes on before the
Yeah.
podcast.
It's like, I trust you fully.
Same thing, though.
What about sticking your hand in your pocket? You ever notice how, I notice this with preachers a lot of times, right? Because I grew up in the churches. The ones who are nervous are the ones they stick their hand in their pocket and they play with their keys or they play with their
It's
coins.
probably a comfort. Yeah.
It's a pet peeve of mine. It's like,
Is it? You don't like the hand in the pocket?
No, I'm like, stop rattling your
It kind of goes I mean, if you're still standing tall, you're still being very confident, and you've got your hand in your pocket casually. Maybe that's different than fidgeting. I think once you start fidgeting, that's a sign of nervousness.
Well, I realized that about myself. Like, this is why video is so powerful, and you should start filming video in your business, is because you can see immediately your attitude that you put across and the fidgeting that you do. I noticed I still talk with my hands like crazy.
Yeah.
But what I used to do was just ridiculous. Like, it was just ridiculous how fidgeting I was and how all over the place with my hands. And I didn't recognize it.
Oh, you're doing it less now.
I'm doing it less now because I've been on video and because I've seen that. And I realized, that was a coping mechanism for my thoughts and my nervousness or whatever it was. And it's like, okay, you got to calm down.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So the third one, this one's kind of funny, but smile slowly is the
that's
third.
Interesting.
Yeah. So
Why
I think
slowly?
Well, what I get from this is if you come in with, a huge grin right off the bat, it's going to look very inauthentic, right? It's going to look disingenuine. If you come in with like a little bit of a smile, that gives enough of that dopamine effect where then you let your smile grow organically. And I think just meeting people with a smile, but not meeting people, like
with a cheese
what's the
grin?
cat? What's the cat in Alice in Wonderland? What's that? The Cheshire Cat.
Yeah.
Don't do a Cheshire Cat smile. Let that smile come organically, and that'll draw people in. Fourth one is to make eye contact. So this eye contact is one of the most powerful ways to transmit energy and indicates interest and openness. So if you're making eye contact with someone, you're showing them that you're
But
open.
don't stare too long.
It's like that.
Don't stare into my soul. Sometimes you meet people and they just like constantly look at you and you're like, look away, bro. Look away. You're freaking me out here.
Yeah, make sure to blink if you're making eye contact. The fifth one here is to raise your eyebrows. So sort of, kind of an obvious one, but raising your eyebrows is a universal sign of recognition and acknowledgement. Now, don't be creepy with this one either if you have your eyebrows raised the whole time. But look, if you're having that conversation with someone, make sure that you're acknowledging. This is all about active listening. We talked about this in the past.
I can see our audience now at their next listing presentation.
No, you got to come with a smile too. Got to go. Yep.
That's like the TikTok where it's like, raise your eyebrows, smile. Now drop.
That's your model face.
Yeah, that's your model face. Dun, dun, dun.
But we talked about also you could do verbal cues. So you can to translate this to the phone. Like if you're speaking with someone, make sure you're acknowledging what they're saying, that you're not silent like you just did there. Yes. Make sure that you're reinforcing what they're saying in a positive way. Again, this is something your brother does. If someone gives them, like, I'm looking for this many bedrooms, that's awesome. I help a lot of people with that many bedrooms. Oh, this is, what's your budget? Oh, this is my budget. That's great, man. That's a great budget. We could definitely work within that. Make sure that you're transmitting that energy to make that first impression. The sixth one here is to lower your pitch. So a higher vocal range indicates a sign of nervousness.
Yeah.
So you want to bring your pitch down. It sounds warmer, sounds more inviting. You want to relax the tension in your throat. You can do this, as funny as it sounds, with vocal exercises, just like singers do. You can do it with breathing exercises. Get that vocal range, get those vocal cords opened up, which will sound more inviting.
Time always passes faster for you in your mind than it translates to the audience or to the person that you're meeting. And that was something I only learned through now experience and maturity is like, oh man, like you think, Luke, these people are like, oh, I got to get to the next thing or I got to say something. There's an awkward silence here. But then you watch back the film or I think back, I go, no, that wasn't an awkward silence at all. You just got to chill. And that allows you to bring down your tone and allows you to be a little bit more Simon Sinek, as I call it. He's fantastic as just like chill.
We need to do that more in the podcast. I need to do that more. I talk really fast.
Yeah, but you're not high.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I don't mean like literally high. I mean like a high pitch. You know?
And the seventh one, and probably the most obvious one, although who knows nowadays, is to shake hands. I know we went through a couple years there where we weren't allowed to shake hands.
Bump
I
elbows.
feel like shaking hands is back, though.
Yes, it is.
Last few events that I've been to.
But you need a firm handshake.
Got to have a firm handshake.
Not too
lean
firm.
in.
Don't squeeze too hard.
Do you guys do the businessman handshake? Do you grab the elbow?
The business
I don't think I've done the business.
I was talking
handshake.
to my friends about that last night, and it's funny you bring that up. You grab the elbow to kind of show some affirmative.
I feel like that'd be going in for a wrestling move. I'd be on my
That's like
there.
the bro hug.
Yeah.
You grab somebody's
Oh,
hand.
the bro hug always gets me. Is it a handshake into the hug or is it an upper?
It's an upper
Like you go
pull
high
in.
with the thumbs and then you pull in.
Comment on the YouTube video
Comment on
and
the
let us
YouTube.
know.
There's a
What
chest
is the
movement that
bro?
goes into it.
Also rooted in neuroscience and evolution, right? This touch is the most primitive and powerful nonverbal cue. So it's clear. I mean, you've heard it forever. A good firm handshake leaves a good first impression.
Yep.
All of that is rooted in that science. There you go. Which one do you think was the most important one?
Smiling slowly.
It's kind of what you said in the beginning.
Actually, I didn't
Kinda what
say
you said
this.
in the beginning,
Yeah, I didn't say this point at the end, but I also find the same of, how a lot of times you find yourself, I hate to say laughing at someone's joke that you don't think is funny or, smiling, but you're doing that out of politeness, and that is a way to build rapport. Also remember to hold that for a little bit longer. Don't just go, ha ha, and then go down. Do you wanna fade that out slowly too? That's an extra tip for you on this silver
bonus
dollar.
tip. There you go. Thank you so much for listening. You can head on over to staypaidpodcasts.com for the show notes and the video of this episode. And if you enjoyed this episode and look for ways to support the show, first is to head on over to Apple Podcasts, drop us a 5-star review along with a comment. We got a couple new ones in, so thank you all.
Thank you
very much for going and doing that. We will read them here. We usually read them before our guest interviews. The best way to show your support is just to simply share this episode with a friend and tell people about our podcast there on social media. Luke, where do boats go when they're sick?
To the hospital.
Oh, man, I thought you were good. To the boat dock.
To the boat dock. Yeah, that's
a-
better. I was like
that's a
hospital.
groaner. That's a groaner. If you want to get a hold of me or Luke, you can email us at podcast@remindermedia.com. And of course, you can follow us on social media. We are at Stay Paid Podcast. For this episode of Stay Paid, I'm Joshua Stike.
And I'm Luke Acree. Guys, here's your action item, right? All of these are great to apply, but I think if you tactically think about your presentation or when you meet people for the first time, do you have the right attitude? Are you standing tall? And are you smiling slowly? Because we'll call it the authentic smile. But check those 3 things the next time you meet someone for the first time so you can make an incredible first impression. Remember, the difference between top producers and mediocre producers in every single business is top producers take action. Take action on that today.